All right, I wanted to kind of create a little tutorial highlight video of a project that I was working on recently. Um, Basically, this is for people who use GNU Linux and like to use tiling window managers, minimal systems, and it's for those people that need notifications. Now, I think most people in that kind of community have heard of Dunst, and Dunst is really an amazing project. Uh, it has a lot of configurability. It's compatible with Wayland if you use a window manager that runs on Wayland, and really, it's really an impressive project. There's only two things that I really have an issue with Dunst, and that's that for one, it takes a configuration, and I'm kind of tending towards like an inherent laziness with my window manager. I really like the tiling window manager, the configurability that is available, but I don't want to be forced into that configurability by default. I want that to be an optional feature. I was really inspired in my project by dmenu, because dmenu is the kind of thing where it's like it does one thing, it does a very simple thing. You can kind of configure it a bit. If you want to do something crazy, you have to go to the source. And that was my same goal. The other reason I don't like Dunst is that Dunst is based on the traditional notification system, which I think they have a picture in their wiki. You can see here, you get a little pop-up window, right? This is traditionally how notifications work. And you get a little pop-up window in the corner, and maybe you can interact with it, maybe you can make it disappear, maybe you can see a history of notifications. All of that, it can contain an icon, contain a bunch of different stuff. But I really don't like that kind of distraction. I prefer a more distraction-free notification system. And I think this may be the earliest example of the kind of system which I've actually kind of recreated. So this is Timeout, which was a project originally developed, I think, to work primarily with DWM. And the principle is that it's notification daemon, notifications come to it, and it displays it in the bar at the top in DWM. And uses the, DWM, you need to use accent root dash name and whatever the text is. And so it basically takes care of, I have a status script and I want that updated at a certain rate, and I have notifications that are coming in, I want them to display in the bar. And I use this for a long time because I used DWM for about a year and a half, and I think it's a great project, but I really wanted to make some modifications, and they were sufficiently breaking changes that I felt it was worthwhile having it as its own kind of fork, and so that's what I've done. I'll also just point out another package called Roofification. Roofification. I always mispronounce it. I think this is actually used in some larger distributions. I'm not sure. But the principle is also very similar. You don't even have the notification itself in the bar. You just have the number of notifications in the bar. And then you have to call Rofi, and in Rofi you can then read the notification or dismiss it. And the reason I didn't like this one is that, one, I found the code a little bit hard to digest, a little bit hard to hack on, and I didn't like the fact that it defaults to this, right? It's not that easy to modify it from this kind of formula. What if I want to use dmenu instead of Rofi? Well, that takes significant hacking. What if I want to actually display the text of the notification in the bar? That takes significant hacking. So that's kind of what led me to make Fondle. And Fondle is pretty much originated as a direct fork of Timeout. Okay, it uses the same dbus communication, uses very similar logic for handling the notifications themselves. It's really everything else that it does that's kind of new. And I've tried to make the README as comprehensive as possible, talk about the possibilities, but by its nature, it's a very minimal tool. And so, you need to tailor it to your own use case, which is kind of what I think is best for these minimal window managers anyway. And I try to have examples for as many options as possible. So I'm just going to go now. Yes, so this is a virtual machine. This virtual machine is running a Fedora 33, and I installed it with the basic desktop option. So it was a net install, and with the window managers option checked. So in other words, it has a bunch of minimal window managers. I also, before I started recording, I installed Spectre WM, the Kitty terminal, some the Google Nodo emoji fonts, Git, and Make, because those are all necessary for what I need. Right now this is an open box, so I can open a terminal in here, and there we go. And the only reason I'm using Kitty, I don't actually use Kitty normally, I just know that Kitty has really good support for emoji and for selecting emojis, and well, I'm going to be using them in some examples later, so that's why I'm using Kitty. So what I'll do is first I'll just clone the repo. So I'm going to clone down there we go, and then I can go into the directory. If you look in here, I mean, this is a very simple project, right? There's a configuration for the make command. There's a make file, license and readme, I mean, whatever. And then Fondle itself. If you actually look at the source code for Fondle, I think it's a little bit shy of 400 lines of code. A lot of it is comments, and probably close to half is just implementing the command line interface, like stuff that you will never touch. You're really just dealing with a class for notifications, a class for the notification manager, and then like the main thread that is running to handle it. So I can install it. So I can do a sudo make install, right? Enter my password. There we go. It's installed. You can also run sudo make uninstall, and that will work as well. Also, Fondle is just a Python file, so you can simply, run it with Python. Python 3 Fondle without even installing will work just fine, right? But I've installed it. Let me go back up to the home directory, right? And if I just run Fondle directly, nothing happens. That's it, right? Let me open another terminal. And I'm going to send a notification, right? So I can manually send a notification. And let's say I'm going to say sample notification. Here is some important text. So you can look at the manual for notify send, but basically this is the summary. This first part is the summary. This is the body. So if I send this, you see over here, Fondle has outputted that notification. Sample notification, here is some important text. And if we look in the man page for notify send, you see there are some various options in here, right? You can set the urgency level of the notification, the expiration time, an icon, categories, hints. Fondle doesn't use, Fondle only uses the summary, the body, and the expire time. It does not use icon, urgency, anything like that. That being said, if you look in the code, that information is collected. And if you're so inclined and want to modify it and make it so that notifications with, the critical urgency in some way behave differently, you can. It probably is not that hard to do, actually. I just chose not to do it because it wasn't necessary for my use case. So that's great. Now, if I send another notification, let's just send just the summary, right? So, I don't know, hello, right? You can see you get just the summary. And you'll notice that Fondle is fairly intelligent. Here, this colon space, this is added by Fondle. And you see here, because I have no body, there is no need to include that colon space. Okay, so Fondle also, let me cancel this. Fondle also has pretty extensive documentation. Fondle-H brings up the whole documentation for Fondle, and you can see all the options. I'm still working on writing a true man page for Fondle. I've never written a man page before, so I need to actually learn how to do that, and then I will do that and probably add that to the project. But in the meantime, just Fondle-H brings you up with all the options. And I just want to go through the options here quickly because you'll really understand how Fondle operates. Then we'll look at it inspect a WM inside a bar, right? So first of all, Fondle, like Statnot, is designed to be able to run with a status script, okay? And if you look, right, you can tell it what command to run that script with the -x flag, right? So by default, Fondle is expecting a shell script, but if you want to write your script in Python, by all means you can. So I think, let's just go in here. Let's see, I'm just checking my notes about the stuff. I guess I should have probably done this a bit out of order, but let's just make a little thing. We're going to do mybar.shell, right? And we'll tell it the shell script, and let's collect the memory. Great, and let's take the date. We're not even going to modify the date at all. Yep, just like this. And then we're going to echo out both. Great, I think that looks fine. So I just want to point out that if you already are using a minimal window manager that is using some sort of shell script to generate your status, it will look something like this. I mean, obviously this is, very much simplified, right? But probably you're collecting blocks of information, storing them in some variables, and then you're echoing them out into whatever text you want to appear in the bar. And normally this region down here that's actually, echoing out these collected values, that's in some sort of while loop. Fondle allows you to use your same script. All you need to change is you need to remove the loop, because Fondle takes care of the timing of displaying the notification. So it means that it's very low effort to actually get your old status script to work with Fondle, right? If you're working with Python, you simply need to make it so, like if you want a Python script, then you simply need to make it so that it echoes out the final value, and Fondle can take that and it can use any script in any language, as long as you provide it with an executable, it'll work fine. So we now have this mybar.shell. So if we run Fondle, and by default it'll take in this script, and we know by default it's using shell, so I can just say fondle mybar.shell, run this, and you see Fondle is printing at some time interval. By default it's 2 seconds. It's printing the output of that shell script. So we see my memory, my free memory, and the date, right? Now, what happens if I send a notification? Well, there we go, right? It looks a little cramped because it's a long notification, but it prints the notification directly prepended to the status information, right? So that's great. Now, let's look at some of the other options that Fondle has available. So executable, great. It's not too hard to just do a Python version of this. So I can show the different thing. Let's just quickly do that. So I'm going to do my bar. Actually, let's just do Python. Let's do pybar.py. And for this to work, I'll need to import OS. I'll import time. And let's take advantage of the Kitty terminal here. I'm going to make a list of emojis. So yes, we can do things like this. I don't remember how many I wanted for this, but I'm pretty sure it's 5. You can see I didn't practice which emojis I was going to do. Sure, let's do this. Okay, so we have a list of emojis, and I'm going to take the tens digit. So let's say that I want to, in my status, I want to display one of these set of emojis, and I want it to update every 10 seconds. Okay, so because of that, I need to take the current time, which in Python, time.time is time from the last epoch. So I'm doing, I'm changing the types a lot, converting the types a lot here, but basically what I'm getting is I'm getting the tens digit. And well, you can look into that yourself if you don't trust me, but hopefully it works on the first shot. And then I'm going to just echo out the output of that. Faces, tens, digit, modulo 5, and am I missing anything here? This, yeah, I'm just gonna do that, and I think that should be it. Okay, I can just check that real quick. Python, okay, that looks like it's working. So then I can do Fondle, PyBar. Of course, this won't work as it is because it expects a shell script. So instead, I have to give it the -x flag or -x executable, and I have to tell it, okay, I need you to use Python 3 for this. And then what's going to happen is I'm not sure why you would want your status bar, but you should see that it's going to print this out, and then every 10 seconds, it will switch which emoji is being displayed. And again, if I send a notification, it's prepended to that. Wonderful. So, it's useful. There's one disadvantage to this, which you have to understand, and I'm experienced with Python mostly, but if you're importing libraries, so say my PyBar script, if I were importing, these are all standard library, but if I were importing some big libraries that take a lot of time, right? The way Fondle operates is it's running this script each time. So right now, every 2 seconds it runs this script. If you're importing, 15 large libraries, that's going to, it's going to introduce a delay, right? So if you're going to use Python, probably keep it simple. But I'm sure if I were better with bash scripting, I could do the same thing quite easily in bash. So let's see, let's go back here. All right, yeah, so we can go into the commands. So by default, Fondle is just going to echo out the result. That's why we can operate with it in the terminal, right? If you were doing this in DWM, right, I could just do something like this, and I could say, I actually want to use a different command using the -c flag, and I would want to use, xsetroot -name, right? And then whenever it's going to output text, instead of echoing out the text, it's going to xsetroot -name the text, which in DWM will make it update the bar on the top. Probably mostly you'll just be using those two just the default echo or that, but the option is there. Default timeout, right? So this is the default notification timeout. Okay, if I send a notification, like notify send hello, that notification is only present by default for 3 seconds. You can't really see it in the terminal because in the terminal, obviously the text is there, it's not disappearing. But in the bar, by default, the notification will appear for 3 seconds. You want to change that, okay, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you want, right? Max timeout, default 5 seconds. This is, I can go in here and I can say notify send, hello, timeout, and in here it's in milliseconds, so I can send a very long timeout if I want, right? And by default, Fondle will basically cut it short at 5 seconds and say that's long enough for you, but you could change that to whatever you want as well. Let's see. I think that's everything to do with timing. Oh no, there's also the update interval -u. So this is the interval over which it will actually update the status, right? So right by default, it's like 2 seconds. Maybe that's too fast, right? You could set this, and now it will only update the status every 10 seconds. And this is a good example to show what happens if, okay, so it's just updated the status. Now, if I run this in the middle, you see the notification still arrives instantaneously, okay? So the timer for updating the status is distinct from the timer for displaying a notification, okay? So whenever you send a notification, it will, by default, force that the status to be updated at that point and display the notification. So you don't have to worry because you set a really long update interval that you're not receiving the notifications that are coming. And in fact, when you do receive a notification, you can trust that whatever other information is in your bar is up to date and accurate. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? Max length. Okay, this is great. So by default, as you see, if I send notification, it sends the summary, separator, and the body. If it's in a bar, maybe you want to limit how long that is. You can set a limit, and this limit is really for a limit on the body text. So maybe I set this limit to 5 characters. Okay. So status still goes through. If I notify send hello, and the thing is, this first part, the summary, can be still as long as possible, as long as you want. It will not cut that part short. Maybe people want that, but I don't know. Whatever. Here is a long notification, right? If I send this, you notice you still get the full summary, but the body has been cut to 5 characters and then 3 ellipses have been added. Okay? So it's just a way of limiting it. If you set the length to 0, what will happen is it simply will not display the body no matter what, or the separator. It will automatically remove the separator as well. So it's kind of up to you how you choose to display this information. What am I missing here? Yeah, okay. So you may wonder though, if you use the something like this, you cut it short, you see a notification with a couple with some ellipses, and you're like, oh wait, I need to actually see what that notification is. Well, Fondle by default has a log that's always operating in the background. So if we cat out the log, it's in temp notification.log, and you can see it will save a record of every notification in its full length in this log. And this has a lot of uses. You can do something like tack, which we can tack it out just so that we see, because it's always appending the latest notification at the end of the log. So if you want to see it in reverse chronological, then you can tack it out. And let's pipe it into dmenu, and let's tell dmenu that we want vertical lines. If we do this, you can see there's our notification. And maybe we should actually run this a little bit more. Let's send a couple notifications. Okay, great. So we've sent 3 notifications, and I can actually leave this running. You know, there's no reason I can't, so I can go here, notifications.log into dmenu -l, and like that, and there you go. So you can use this to, you know, you can write something like this to see the notifications, and if you want to be like Roofification, you want to use Rofi, I mean, it's quite easy also to integrate with Rofi. So you know, everything is controllable by you because it's all just plain text. One thing to note is that that notification log will grow forever as long as you're in a single session. But as soon as you start Fondle again, so like I've stopped Fondle, that will still work. That file still retains the last set of notifications. If I restart Fondle at this point and run this, there's nothing, right? There are no notifications because Fondle resets and deletes the file every time it restarts. So just something to keep in mind, small detail. If you wanted to change that, you quite easily could. You can also do some kind of, you know, you could do some like crazy scripting stuff, you know, like let's say you really wanted to duplicate the style of Roofification, right? Well, okay, fine. You just don't even use Fondle to generate your status, right? So you just leave Fondle running in a background process when you start your window manager or something, right? Let's just do that again. I come in here and I send some notifications. There we go. Some notifications have been sent. So you can just imagine this is, you know, running in some background process, right? And I can just take, let's see, here I can pipe this into this, right? Well, that tells me how many lines are in that file, right? So if I want to, if I have a status script that I'm generating my bar with, I don't want to use Fondle with that, no problem. Fondle is just your notification daemon, right? I mean, more realistically, you wouldn't even have this this displaying. It would just be, you know, in some background process, but it's still recording everything. You could just put this into the bar and it would say, okay, notifications 3. And, you know, you want to delete it? Well, I mean, let me just copy the script that I wrote to do just that. Where did I put it? Yep, here we go. So okay, you want to delete a notification. Well, I'm gonna do this again. Notifications.log. I'll pipe that into dmenu. And then while read, call it noti. Alright, see, I've already made a syntax error. Oh. There we go. So now, again, I have a D menu, but if I go in here and I select an option, nothing happens. But if I run this again, you can see that notification has been deleted. So you can, you know, I mean, this is just a one-line shell script. You can kind of build it how you want. You want Roofification style, you build it Roofification style. You want Fondle to take care of your whole status bar, Fondle can take care of your whole status bar. It's all plain text. So let's go back into here. Let's just go through the last few options. Okay, update interval, replace status. Yes, okay, so by default, Fondle prepends notifications to the status. If you don't want that, you can just do the -r. I think StatNot does this by default. Now, if I run if I send a notification here, you can see that it's not prepended, it replaces, right? So if you had this for your status bar, it would mean that all of your status blocks would disappear and your notification would appear there, right? It's up to your preference. I think that it maybe makes it pop a little bit more if you have if you're working in DWM, maybe it can be a little annoying too. So that's your own choice. The option is there. And then one part that we get into that's really fun is the -s, -p, and -a flags. So, or options, sorry. Separator is just a string, which is defining what separates the summary and body, right? So by default, it's a colon and a space. You could change that to anything you want. Prepend is what appears before the beginning of the summary. By default, it's nothing. It's an empty string. And append, which by default is a single space that appears afterwards, right? You can change this to anything you want. And let's try to we could do something fancy. So I could say I'm going to do -p, and let's do the heavy exclamation mark. I'm using an emoji because terminal supports it here. And I can do -a, and I'm going to do a separator bar like this so that it matches with it. I run this, everything looks great. Let's send a notification. Notification, bang, right? You have an emoji, you have the thing, you have this separator where this is what is actually added at the append, right? So it fits in nicely with the rest of the bar, okay? So that's one example. Another example is that you could use this to do coloration, right? So if I'm doing terminal output, right, I could do, and if you want to do this in the terminal, you have to specify that the command isn't just echo, it's actually echo-e, so that it acknowledges the escape codes, right? And then go in here, \e, and I'm changing the background color to red. And then when the notification is over, I want to turn it back to the normal colors. So like this, and I'll also throw that in there. And okay, so again, it looks normal. Let me go to a shorter notification. Hello world, there we go. And I think this would look even nicer if I put a little, put some extra space there. So I'm just going to do a space here and maybe a space here. Great. Oops. And then if I send the notification, wonderful. I mean, this is just in your terminal. If you want to, you could just throw this terminal on a workspace, that you don't use very often, or if you're using Spectre-WM, minimize it, and you can just check it occasionally. But it works well, right? But what makes this really powerful is when you start to think about bars or terminal or window managers that accept kind of a markup, right? So Spectre-WM, you can actually color the bar output using these expansion codes. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Lemon Bar, I think, has even way more functionality actually that you can apply. And all of that can be done just by changing the prepend, the separator, and the append, right? So I think that's everything I want to show you in this. So let's switch over to Spectre-WM. I'm going to exit out of OpenBox. Great. And I'm going to switch Spectre-WM. Okay, the bar looks super tiny, but I'm going to just try to show this quickly. So first I'm going to launch Kitty again, and I need to copy the default configuration and put it into the correct directory. So first I'll make the Spectre-WM configuration directory there, and then I'll copy the configuration. Great. And now we can just look at that. Okay, so this is the default configuration. Looks good. So all of these lines that have the hashtag before are commented out. And I'm just checking my notes. So first we're going to mostly want to go down to the bar section, right? Bar enabled, that's obviously true by default. Here under bar color, I'm going to add an additional color. I'm going to add, I think it has to be without the space. So I'm going to add red as the second bar color. Bar font color, I'm also going to add an additional one. And I'm just going to add black, because you can see by default it is white. And bar font color, bar action. So yes, this is the script that will generate the status. And I've done some testing. This must be a shell script, but that's not much of a problem for us. I'll show you in just a moment how we can still get Fondle to work with that. Bar action expand. So we actually want this to be 1. This will allow us to use the color codes. And I also want to actually just do a simple bar format. You can look in the man page for Spectre WM for what all of these options are. So this is going to be plus pipe plus, and that's the action. Great. And hopefully that's everything that we need. So let's close out of this. Oh, there's one more thing. I remember that here you should be explicit. So I'll point it directly to where I'll place the script. Great. Okay. So now I'm still in the correct place, so I need to actually make a bar action script. So that's no problem, bar action.shell. And user bin shell. And all I need to put in here is what I want to run. So I can just go here, / mybar.shell. So I mean, it's just the single command. I want to run Fondle, right? Fondle's going to echo something out. Spectre WM gets what it expects. It runs a shell script and something is echoed out, and that's it. So that's great. So I now have my bar action. I don't recall if that needs to be made executable. I'm going to reload Spectre WM. And I think it may need to be executable. There we go. Yeah, so okay. So the Spectre WM does want this to be executable. So you can see now when I reload, here we have the status, which we already set earlier, free memory and the date. That's being updated every 2 seconds. That's in our Fondle bar, right? So, great. Very low effort. If you already have a shell script, even lower effort. And if I notify send, notification, it appears there, right? Now, that's all good. Now we can also just like we did with the output in the terminal, we can add some colors, right? I can just go back into this bar actions script and I can say, okay, well, I'm going to prepend and I'm going to use Spectre WM's notation. So background color, I want to set it to red, which is the red, which is the second element. And foreground color, I'm going to change it to black. And I'll give it, I think I gave it 2 spaces there. And then for the append, 2 more spaces at the end, and then I change everything back to the defaults. Foreground back to normal, and plus at background equal to normal, this. And I see that I forgot my ampersand. Does that look good? That looks good to me. Great. Now I just reload the window manager. Everything's fine. Let's send another notification. And look at that. You have a colored notification that pops up, right? It's out of the way. It's not a pop-up bubble. You don't need to click on it. It appears, it's there. It's great. I think I could make it look even a little bit nicer if I added a space after this. Something like this. Beautiful, right? That's, what more can you ask for, right? So, and then on top of it, just like I said before, I mean, the notification log is still there. It comes with the actual highlighting and stuff, but everything is saved. If you want to pipe it again, if you want to display it, maybe you want a recurring notification, right? You could write a script which goes through this log and which resends these back to the bar, and they'll appear again, So however you want to do it, everything is in your control. Yeah, so give it a try. I think I can go back to the browser, right? Give it a try. In my case, with this install of Fedora, I didn't even need to do anything, but it requires Python. It requires the Python package, right? Dbus Python. I recommend, in my case, whenever I'm installing a Python package, which is necessary for something running on my system directly, I just look for it in the repos. So Fedora has this in its package repository. I install it there. And you need GTK3, which in my case was installed by default, and PyGobject, right? And if you go to the installation instructions for PyGobject, you can look in here. In my case, I went to Fedora, and I just copied this line, and that pretty much took care of everything, right? And they have instructions for most systems, so I don't think there's a really high barrier to entry. So yeah, give it a try, hack on it, fork it, completely replace it. It's just designed to be easy, modular, and easy to replace, easy to break, easy to change to work in whatever way you want. So that's pretty much it. I hope this maybe piqued your interest.